Hey everybody, it's Nikki again. I'm back with you today, and it actually is going to be a little different from the last few videos that I have done with you guys. So today I'm actually going to do just a little video, probably a part one, I hope, of two maybe. Um, and just working a little bit on a very small painting. So this is actually going to go onto a Christmas tree. Surprisingly enough, I guess probably some people won't be very surprised by that, but um, it is going on a tree that is going to be in something called a festival of trees. So I don't know if everybody has stuff like this where they are, but around here it happens pretty regularly. Like, not every town has one, but it is pretty common where you basically have a sort of show of Christmas trees that are all decorated by different local organizations. So, like, you could have one um, decorated by a local like a church, or it could be decorated by a business, a local small business, or in my case, it's actually decorated by the artists that belong to an organization that I belong to. So everybody does, or everybody who wishes to, does like a really small little piece of work, and then they hang them all on the tree. And when you go in, you pay for little raffle tickets, and you put the raffle tickets in each tree that you're interested in. So all of them will have like different little cool things. Like, so ours will have all tiny little paintings on this a small tree, and if your raffle ticket gets picked, you win the whole tree, and you get to take that tree home with you with all the little tiny paintings, and then whatever else gets hung on there. Some people decorate theirs with things like gift cards or stuff like that. So there's all sort of different ones, and it's just kind of like a fun like holiday event. And so we all kind of donate a little bit of our time to do that, if we so desire to. So I usually do. So they give us the um, either like a real small canvas or a piece of watercolor paper, usually if you're watercolorist like myself. But this year they actually gave me something different. They did give me a little piece of watercolor paper, but they also gave me this. They said that they didn't know if I wanted to give it a try, because it was something new that they were trying out. And it's this really tiny, it says all art, um, all media art panel. It's called Art Bites. Art anywhere, anytime, for anything. And it says on here, strong 2.3 millimeter board, with a proprietary impervious canvas textured paper surface, can be used with any media. And it does say including oil or acrylic paints, chalks, crayons, pencils, marker, glue, and glitter. Excellent for stamping, block printing, and collage. So I'm not sure at all how it will react with watercolor paint, because it says for all media, but that is one that was not listed on the back here. So I do have a piece of watercolor paper as well, just in case, because they weren't sure either how it would take to the watercolor. So I am just going to give this a try today. So it's not going to be a super long video, but it's going to be just like a little something, especially because I'm not sure how the paint will dry on it. So I don't want to put too many coats, too many layers, because it is sort of it's hard to see, it's hard to tell, I think, but it has sort of a spongy texture to the board that it's mounted on here. So I don't know how it will absorb the water, and I don't want it to get really soaking wet and then sort of become very muddy and not very workable. So I'm going to just try today to do just a little experiment, I think, and perhaps just a coat or two, and then I'll come back and revisit it at a later time as well, I think, to see sort of how it takes second coats. So I don't know if you can see some of my paint palettes, but I work off like the dirtiest paint palettes ever. I just work, I add colors in and I mix and I mix and I do crazy things. So my palettes are not very clean, usually because I like to work in a certain color style, I would say. So typically my paintings tend to have very similar basic palettes, and I think it does come from the fact that I continuously work out of the same palettes with the same colors, but it's the colors that I like, and I do use a range of colors as well. But I have recently been purchasing a few newer colors to add in. But for this piece right now, I am going to just use the colors that I already have, because I'm not even sure how this whole thing's going to go. So the picture I'm going to be working on is actually going to be a picture of a little bird sitting on a branch. I have a reference photo here. And I'm just going to kind of, I think, I'm going to just block in a little color on a little, I think I'm going to work, because most of this picture that I'm working from seems to have, I'm going to go pretty wet, I think, to start, to be honest with you. So I just want to see what's up with the surface. And I'm going to do, it seems like this painting, I mean, not this painting, the photo that I'm looking at tends to be quite gray and blue, but I feel like I'm going to end up adding a lot of yellows, and I'm going to bump up some greens that I can see. First, yeah, I'm going to start. Actually, I might want a little bigger brush here. This one's not cutting it for me right now. I'm going to go for a bigger brush. Let's see what's going on. I definitely didn't want to start at first with the big brush because I was working in such a tiny surface. And I actually think I'm going to block in a little color. So it's actually kind of different for me to work too, because typically I work on either a watercolor block or I work on a watercolor paper that is affixed to a board. So I actually have like a free, loose little board like this. Is a little weird because it seems to me slightly less secure on a surface than I would typically do, but that's okay. This is all about experimentation right now, so it seems like it is absorbing into the paper. So that's good. Because I was worried actually at first that it might simply kind of like reject to absorb at all, because the water either might seep right in, or I wasn't sure at all what was going to happen. okay so far. And I would be, oopsie, I would be interested as well to see how a little bit of a bigger version of this would work. And I do actually also have a new um, product that I am probably going to do a video on as well. And I believe they're called aqua boards, and I was just happened to be in an art supply store, saw them. I do believe they were on sales, is one of the reasons. But I was very interested in trying them out, and I had never tried them before. I have not tried them yet. So I think that it would be a first impressions situation that will happen then. And I feel like it is sort of drying down a little differently than it normally would. It actually seems like it is. I'm actually going to tap it. It seems like it's drying a lot faster, but I don't think this is going to take a lot of layering. I can kind of already tell that the surface itself is getting a little delicate. It looks like if you keep working into it, it will sort of pill up even almost a little bit, like a little shedding of this work surface is possibly going to happen. I'm going to keep trying to work into it, but keep in mind that I probably won't be able to do too many coats. But the texture that I'm kind of getting from what I've worked into already is actually kind of interesting. So I'm gonna keep going on this. I'm actually going to add a little bit of thing. I think I might try a little wet into wet. Yeah, crazy. Because I want to see what's gonna happen. It's got a cool texture. Yeah. Sometimes just working into a paper will give you a little different feeling. It'll be interesting too. I don't know if I would use this again if I had the choice, because it doesn't seem to be necessarily specifically made for watercolor. I think you would do much better working into it with something like acrylics or oils. I think for acrylics this would be pretty cool. I haven't worked in acrylics in a really long time, and honestly don't know if I even have any ones that are not dried all up. Otherwise I would give it maybe a shot. A little green one in that. That's okay. I'll just mix it in everywhere because that would be very neat. A lot of my work does have some interesting color play, so I'm never afraid to get a little something that I didn't mean to necessarily. I'm gonna go in with a little brighter blue. See what happens. Yeah, it definitely is not going to be, if you're wet into wet, you like working wet into wet, it's definitely not staying very wet for very long, it seems like. Getting that feeling that this is actually, it is getting fairly absorbed into the actual board here. And it does kind of have like an interesting little effect going on texturally. I'm gonna try. So, yeah. Dark on here, maybe. We have that blue. Tiny little guy here, so getting some of that detail work. It's gonna be interesting. Oh, bleed. It's okay. Okay. And actually, I don't use a lot of hard black. I typically go for darker mixed colors. Just because I feel like in nature, especially if you're doing like a natural subject, usually there is less like very saturated color. There's always a shade or two of something else. I am getting some bleeding happening, so I'm not having a very crisp edge, so it isn't drying as fast as I thought it was in some areas, which is interesting. Let's see here. Light here, try to work in a different area, and that way give it time to dry. I definitely think this is would be really cool to use if you were on the go, or if you were maybe I don't know, on vacation or somewhere where you couldn't bring a whole bunch of art supplies, like a little cute little canvas like this. Would be pretty great to be able to bring with you, and then you could sort of work on whatever. I feel like I like the texture of this because it is a little bit more of a textured surface. It does say it's like a papered surface, like a prepared papered surface, so it is a little more textured than some of the watercolor paper that I normally use, I would say. I usually like to get a pretty smooth surface. I do like working on a smooth surface. I feel like I always have. But that is, of course, a personal preference. I feel like I always liked to, if I was going to have a texture, I would always want it to be a texture that I myself intentionally can control and can put in on my own versus one that was just something I was working with from the texture of the paper. And definitely seems like once it sort of drying a bit, that there is not a whole lot of you can't really work back into it too much with this medium. Whereas like for anybody out there who is worked in watercolor before, definitely depending on what you're working on, you can go back in and sort of to a point pick up color or sort of slightly re-wet the surface. I'm trying to get a little bit of a dry brush on. Not sure what I'm doing here. Okay, so I'm gonna get a little crisp edge going on, not too crisp. Later he is pretty fluffy. Don't mind that actually. Getting a little bleeding on the beak area, but he actually didn't have he has like a little fluffy plumage there anyway. But I'm not going to work anymore in this area because it seems like it's very wet and it's not drying down as fast as the rest. And you just kind of leave your delicate area. I'm going to put a little body color on. Just a tad. Work in a little bit with more water. Don't want to get too far up into here and do some of that cool intricate area. I do want to do a layer of body color. My cat is singing to us. You can hear her in the background. And she probably has her toy. Maybe she's just tired of classic. Okay, and actually there's a little more like almost a peach tone here. So I'm going to do a little color. Just bring it up. Liven them up a little bit. A little life in this. A little bit like this. Okay. Okay. I'm just going to do a quick, very subtle little. I was going to do some greens here, but I think I'm going to start actually before I get into greens with a little bit of yellow. I'm going to do very light yellow base and some of this little branch that he happens to be sitting on. And we're back onto it. So you want to reserve some whites because for some snow on this picture. I want to leave that some, especially because this is for a sort of holiday thing. It's the War of Trees, which is usually a Christmas tree, but they are not exclusively. Okay. So at this point, because it's such a small canvas and it is pretty wet and it's pretty saturated at the moment, I think I am going to have to do a pause and come back to you guys. Maybe I'll do a little bit more work on it and then do maybe one other more finalized session to give you more details and we can go together on that one. But as of right now, I'm very damp still on this. I've got a little very basic, I don't know if you guys can see, rudimentary base painting going on here. So I'll work back into that once it's dried a little bit more because like I said, it doesn't seem to take too much water um, without starting to get a little bit of shedding on it. And it seems like it peels up, not peels up, but kind of curls slightly around the very edge. And I will be interested to see what that will do as it does dry. So I'm hoping that it doesn't bow or bubble or anything like that, but I'm gonna let it dry down in hopes that it won't curl anymore as well to see because if I feel like if I saturate it anymore with water that it definitely is going to get pretty curled up at the edges. So I'm just going to let it dry and we will come back at a later time and try to work some more on it. But thank you guys for watching and stay tuned for the next installment.